So we built the fence in the yard. We built the enclosures in the yard. We built the goat feeding system and all that kind of stuff ourselves. These are the kinds of things that you can do, boys and girls, when you're not spending your whole life working to pay somebody else, such as the government, or just working for a boss and giving them value. The thing that you keep in mind while you're stacking sats is, I have a dream. I have dreams. I want to accomplish these dreams. And that's what you're working for. We now have a way to save our value and not have it be stolen from us, which is so crazy.
Greetings and salutations, my fellow plebs. My name is Walker, and this is the Bitcoin Podcast. The Bitcoin time chain is 867048, and the value of one Bitcoin is still one Bitcoin. Today's episode is Bitcoin Talk, where I talk with my guest about Bitcoin and whatever else comes up. And today, my guest is Sat, aka Lightning Goats. I met Sat through Noster because I stumbled upon his awesome project where he live streams his goats from his off-the-grid homestead, and whenever you zap Bitcoin to the goat's Lightning address, it automatically feeds them, which is just pretty awesome. Sat sold half his Bitcoin stack a few years back so he could quit his job and live off the grid. And we get into a bunch of topics today, from Noster and decentralized communities to the challenges and opportunities presented by technology, the evolving nature of identity in the digital age, the impact of social media on kids and mental health, sustainable living, individual liberty, dynamic optimism, and a whole lot more. Before we dive in, do me a favor and subscribe to the Bitcoin Podcast wherever you're watching or listening. Give this show a boost if you find it valuable on Fountain. And if you're not on Fountain.fm, what are you doing? You can earn Bitcoin just for listening to the show. Check out bitcoinpodcast.net for episodes and additional resources. Head to the show notes to grab discount links for my sponsor Bitbox and other partners. And send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net if you have feedback or if you're interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast. Without further ado, let's get into this Bitcoin talk with Sat. We are apparently live. I'm still a Zap.Stream newbie. I was never meant for this podcast to be like a live show, but then started seeing people doing more stuff on Zap.Stream and thought, well, this is pretty cool. And if I'm going to do a live show, why not make it like a treat for the folks on Noster who are going to go and check out Zap.Stream and be there first, and kind of have that be the only place that the show is live. In a little bit of an effort to kind of, okay, let's see if we can get more people over to Noster and using some of these tools.
Yeah, Noster is a great marketing tool. People on Noster are like a good tribe of people. When you're looking at things from a marketing perspective, you want to have like a core group of fans that get the brand. And Nostr integration is a big part of that. It's leveraging the echo chamber to your benefit.
It's a good way of putting it. And it's funny too, because I found that even amongst Bitcoiners, I've been somewhat surprised at often, let's say, how some people are very much still like don't see the point of Nostr. They're not really, it seems like it's somehow too much work for them, or it's not gonna be around very long, or whatever it may be. And I find that so funny because, first of all, I found it to just be an incredible experience to interact with and meet people through Noster that I did not already know through the, let's say the Bitcoin Twitter community.
Okay.
But then also just the quality of the conversation. I think this is something that people say again and again and again. It's like, something feels different. It's not your average social media platform, let's say.
Yeah, it's a lot more genuine. It's a lot less manipulated. It's a lot more like the web was back in the day. Zoom back in time to around, 2003 or so. People that had online communities, they were largely self-hosted, in various ways, so it was decentralized in that manner. And a lot of the people that were getting online at the time were just kind of friendly, kooky people. And to be able to build or find others of like mind and build a community, that's a lot of what happened at that time. You know, um, as you know, as out in clown world, there's a lot of expectations on you on how you're going to look, what things you can and can't say, who you can say them around, all that kind of stuff. Online communities, unfiltered, unmanipulated online communities are really important because they allow people to find their true tribe. You know what I mean? Um, that's why one of the reasons I started doing this Lightning Ghost project was this idea of communicating with people that I wanted to communicate with. So I kind of had this idea that I would use code and creativity to build credibility amongst people that I would see online, kind of like in the Bitcoin intellectual space. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to talk to these people? Well, the only way to really do it in Bitcoin is to actually build something, right? You put in some proof of work. And so that was one of the strategies for the project, kind of like a deliverable, so to speak, was, I want to be able to interact with Bitcoiners, um, to eventually, engage in philosophical discussions with Bitcoiners, to not have to fly to conferences and get all burned out, that kind of thing, not to say, I mean, it would be really cool to do that. I actually haven't been to any conferences, but this was kind of like the first step for Lightning Ghost projects along the journey towards, say, getting on the Bitcoin right? So I'm pleased to meet you, and
No, it's a
honored
pleasure
to be here.
to meet you too. No, it really, I mean, I started this podcast for somewhat similar reasons, although not as cool to have a podcast as it is to be feeding goats with lightning over Noster. That's definitely way more cypherpunk. But I started the podcast with the goal, like, I want to be able to talk to people in the Bitcoin space, a lot of whom I'd had the pleasure of meeting already because my wife and I had been making this short form content for an amount of time. And, we never did any sort of we tried to keep it like we did a couple of sponsored videos. I think we did like one for Trezor back in the day. We did one for Brains Mining, but we got offered to do a bunch of sponsored stuff. And we just kind of said, nah, we're okay. We've got our day jobs. We'll do this because we enjoy doing it. We think these are messages that need to get out there. We're having fun doing it too. And so I built some connections through that, but me starting the show, I was like, okay, my audience is decently big now between, centralized, cuckold platforms like X, but then also on decentralized non-cuckolded platforms like Noster. And I thought, there are a lot of Bitcoin podcasts out there. I would like to have one where I don't just need to feel the force to interview the same people over and over and again. And there are some great people who I enjoy talking to over and over again. But sometimes I think we get stuck in a bit of this kind of like macro echo chamber within Bitcoin and within Bitcoin kind of podcasts and media. And sure, I love a good macro episode as much as the next guy, but I also want to talk to people who have figured out how to feed goats via anonymous Lightning transactions happening over the Lightning Network and Noster, because I just think that's really cool. And so that, it's a beautiful thing that because of Bitcoin and Noster, these protocols that do not care who you are or what you do, you're able to meet people. Like we're meeting for the first time right now. We're streaming this live on Noster. We've got 22 folks that have hopped in here already, which is just nice. So hello to anyone who is watching this live. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being on Noster. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. It's like you said, it's people freely organizing and associating, I think, is the way the internet was meant to be. And massive centralized social media companies have sort of perverted that a little bit. And you see the effects of that too, and like especially on kids. There's a reason I think we have so many mental health issues, and there's obviously more pharmaceutical reasons for that as well, and probably food related issues as well. But I think a huge part is just this ridiculously toxic environment that kids are thrust into from a young age on these centralized social media platforms, and meant to feel like they have to somehow compete and stake out their territory and one up each other. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty harsh, and there's a lot to unpack there. So going back to some of what you said in the beginning, it got me thinking about it's one of the beautiful things about working for Bitcoin. Not hustling for SATS per se, but working for the Bitcoin network. You know what I mean? Like, how am I going to be an employee of Bitcoin? How am I going to do the thing that helps Bitcoin besides just holding and, shit posting and memeing and kind of stuff, which is all awesome. The informational side of things is essential. Um, but, when you start wondering about, how can I really help Bitcoin? I don't know if you're a big science fan. There's some books out there, a couple of them, by Daniel Juarez, I think his name is, the demon novels, I guess you would call them, or Damon, because it's Oemon.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. These were written before Bitcoin, few years, maybe in 2003. But they describe kind of like a cybernetic organism, the daemon, that runs on the internet, and it has goals, and it can interact with people using gamified kind of incentives and that kind of stuff, and people become demon operatives, so to speak. So they begin working for the network. And in the first novel, it all sounds really bad. It's at the very best, the network is considered to be kind of ambiguous, but most of the time you get the sense that the demon network is what is being fought against. Second book rolls around and you find out that a whole network or counterculture has arisen using the daemon network as an organizing principle. And so demon operatives, they get tasks assigned to them. They go out and they do these tasks. It may be something like they go and they stop at a particular location and they drop off a drill bit or something. Somebody else gets it and they bring it on to the next piece in the chain, and eventually it accomplishes whatever kind of task is out there. And but then you find out that they're building hold-ons, which are communities, kind of like communities of people of like mind who are trying to reach the most independent or sovereign state that they can. So it's a whole unit, a whole on in philosophy is a whole in itself composed of smaller parts that is itself part of a larger whole, right? So you get like a human being who's composed of cells, and human culture, which is composed of humans, which are an animal on the earth, which is a larger whole on, so you kind of get this idea of scale, of complexity, and that kind of stuff. But the idea of the whole that's part of a larger whole that is itself composed of complete whole. So they build these organizational units, town, things like that are most of the team operatives. So that whole kind of idea is sort of a tangent, but it got me thinking about how can I work for Bitcoin? How can I be like a daemon operative, And so, so the goat says that too, it's kind of funny, but
No,
yeah. And
I love it.
so the second thing you started to get into was the idea of captured platforms,
Mm.
and it's a drag the way things are. It is. The good news is over time, I'm a Gen Xer, so when I was like, say, a teenager or whatever, the culture was controlled by three media companies, all culture. And those three media companies, ABC, CBS, and NBC, they worked very closely with the government, whatever the idea was that the government wanted to get across, like, say, just say no to drugs or whatever it was. It was just like, boom, I said it, and everybody was on the same page. Everybody got the same thing. There was no real nonconformity, so to speak, in the media, at least, until cable came up, and that complexified things a little bit. So, people are very generationally aware. Take all the generational shit with a little bit of a grain of salt because of marketing categories, but they are useful to say that, when the boomers came around, they were the first group of people that rebelled in mass against the culture the way it had been, you know. So they introduced actually that generational awareness. You listen to the songs, my generation, all that kind of stuff. And then they had us, the Gen Xers, which is kind of like this a really wide group of people because it wasn't just us against culture; it was us against our parents and the culture, and we subdivided into smaller groups, right? So there was metalheads and goths and jocks but there hadn't been those well-defined groups, kind of like as marketing categories until that time. So there wasn't a lot of diversity in in the way that people were looking at the world and reacting to propaganda that was being fed to through media and public education. Um, However, time goes on and the millennials rise, and they're kind of like further atomized, so to speak. They break things down even smaller because now the internet is becoming the same, right? You got the early Gen Xers that kind of do shit on the net, but the millennials really you come to being with the net as like an ambient thing, like I came to know with television as an ambient sort of thing. Um, for a while. It was free, but it was difficult to find things, right? Like Jack Dorsey says, there's that problem of being able to find things on the net. So you get these kind of gateways or places like Netscape or AOL or CompuServe that act as doorways that aggregate information for people, often using the same kind of media outlets that had existed in the past. During this time, shit you not, man, in public education, that's funny. The internet was a scary thing, and it was that had programs in public school to try and teach kids about the dangers of the net. Walker, you could go onto the net and you could meet somebody, and they could be a pedophile. Danger, danger, danger. Really bad shit happens on the net. Um, it's the same old technology kind of story happening with the net itself. But there's people at this time that are talking about, oh, freedom. This is going to be a force. Freeze people. Um, it's an open network. It can't really be censored. There's this idea that nuclear war won't take down the net. And so it kind of gets, you go through this period of time where you get like first hype cycle, which is around the year 2000 or so. Um, Around that time, I became a web developer myself. I had worked prior to that as landscaper and a chef primarily. But I had had my kid. I was around age 28 when my son was born. And I wanted to do something a little bit more serious. So I was like, fucking, I'm going to get into IT, and so that's what I did. Uh, no formal training or anything, just talk to people, find, find, uh, find ways into things, if you're intelligent. Um, yeah, figure. But as you go through time, the point about this whole kind of like thing is in the past, information was a lot more uniform, and there were, nowadays we get to this point where everything's differentiated out. You just have all these sub realities out there, you know, and nobody knows what's true, who to trust. And everybody wants to be a part of something that gives them purpose. And people like social structure. We evolve as social beings. So even if you're a weirdo, like a total autist, so to speak, um, you still like to be around people. You might be a little bit kind of freaked out by the social things that they're doing, wondering what the fuck, this doesn't make sense, but you still like to be around them, right? It's hardwired into us. So we find ourselves in this weird situation where at the moment, nobody knows what binds us together. And dude, tell you what the thing is. You got a show about it, the Bitcoin podcast. It's the Bitcoin network. The Bitcoin network is the thing, the common layer that all disparate tribes can communicate through. Um, because when you exchange value, dude, that is the purest expression of what your ethics are in the world. You are not going to spend your hard-earned sats on anything that you do not agree with, right? It's like, dude, this is wrong. They are not getting my money. So it's an amazing thing. Um, you've already done the work, but for the people in the audience, there's this idea that our fiat system right now introduces a lot of noise into our communication with one another. It distorts our values. I'm forced to spend time and energy of my own. I have this finite piece of life, but I have to give like 30% or 40% of that time to entities who are managing my energy for me and spending it on things that I don't necessarily agree with. Some of them might be just morally reprehensible. Like, dude, I don't want to support war. What the fuck, man? Come on, you know. Um, so that's where we are, and this is why I'm so stoked about Bitcoin. This is why I work on my lightning goat stuff. This is why I want to talk to people like you. Want to talk to people like the Simply Bitcoin guys. Want to eventually talk to some of the bigger name guys like Saifedean or whomever, be able to have these discussions. Because when I went to college, it was just to go to college. So I didn't declare a major. I just took courses such as philosophy and journalism because those are the things that I liked, right? So I did a lot of philosophy courses, wrote journalistic articles about things that were happening, thought I would be a writer. Like Eric Cason, who was on just recently, did LSD, it was a good time in my life to do LSD. It was highly illegal, but it didn't matter because who cares what their laws really are? You have to do truly what you feel is correct, right? I'm not saying anybody should do this. It's actually kind of dangerous. Um, not physically, but mentally, you could become a little bit unstable, especially if you do what I did, which was do it lots and lots and lots. But, but that was my education, doing acid, living in a ski town in northwest Colorado in Steamboat Springs. Went to Colorado Mountain College there and studied philosophy and journalism, did LSD, hung out in bars, and experienced life. Right?
Speaking of education, one of the biggest parts of your Bitcoin education is learning that not your keys, not your coins. So go to bitbox.swiss/walker and use the promo code Walker for 5% off the fully open source, easy to use Bitcoin only BitBox02 hardware wallet. Then get your Bitcoin off the exchange and into your own self-custody. The Bitbox team is awesome. They build easy to use, secure, open source solutions to keep your Bitcoin safe. And not only is the Bitcoin in your Bitbox safe from government confiscation, but Bitbox is one of the only 2 wallets to actually address the dark Skippy vulnerability. So you are in luck if you have a Bitbox. And if you don't, just go to bitbox.swiss/walker and use that promo code Walker for 5% off. I cannot emphasize enough that the BitBox02 is easy as hell to use, whether you're brand new to Bitcoin and it's your first time setting up a hardware wallet, or you are a well-seasoned psychopath. Again, it is Bitcoin only and fully open source. You can head to their GitHub and verify that for yourself. Don't trust me or Bitbox. When you go to bitbox.swiss/walker and use the promo code Walker, not only do you get 5% off, but you also help support this podcast. So thank you. There's a couple pieces I want to pick up on there, but the most recent one just being the idea of actually experiencing life. Because I think this is what, at least, I see not happening as much in so I'm a millennial, right? And our generation, as you said, was kind of that interesting bridge generation when it comes to the internet. Because for me, I still remember dial up and, DSL and all of that. And then, Wi-Fi, whoa, that's a trip, man. But most millennials are not digital natives. They're right on the cusp. We came into it as it was happening. That was formative, but we're not native to it. We're just right on the edge. But then, like the Zoomers, Gen Z, they are fully digitally native. And at least what I've seen is that there is you can look at this as a good or a bad thing, but they're consuming way less alcohol, which okay, great, much better for your body. This beer is not doing me any favors for my health, but I enjoy it. I've also spent more time than I can possibly count at bars with friends, fucking around, having a great time, probably too good of a time sometimes, but just going out and literally experiencing the world versus being so sucked into so consumed by the media that is being put in front of them with the type of image that they are trying to curate for others to show that they are in fact living that happy, perfect Instagram filtered life. And I think that it's man, a lot of these kids would just, it'd do them a world of good just to cut loose a little bit and stop thinking so much and get out of their phones a bit and go mess around in bars. When I was in college, people, they're, I'm not that old, I'm in my early 30s, but when I was in college, people just weren't taking photos every time they went out, there's not a ton of photos of my college experience and plenty of photo worthy moments, I'm sure. But the point being that people were actually out and their phones were away or in their pockets, or they had just broken them earlier that night, whatever it may be. People tended to, I think, be more in the moment. And I think there is so much to be said for that, for presence. And this goes
Right.
back to like what some of these platforms really take away from people is the ability to be fully present. They've even done those studies that it's like, if there is just like a smartphone in the room with you, doesn't have to be yours, doesn't have to be like screen on, just literally like you set a smartphone on a table, and people's ability to concentrate on whatever the task at hand is decreases like demonstrably, just by the sheer presence of that, because we have become so coded. It's just become, part of us that it's like, those little sidelong glances to the phone you don't even know are happening. And some of us, we try to catch ourselves doing that, right? Or we try to be really mindful about it and try to put the phones away, put it out of reach. Spending time with my son who's under a year old, just like throw the phone in the other room, unless I'm taking a picture of him because he's being real cute. But like, don't want that really like around him at all. But I wonder just how much, like, we still don't know what the long-term implications of that are, because we haven't had a generation go through all of their lives with this technology pervading every single square inch of their experience of the world. That hasn't happened yet. Like, we are the guinea pigs in real time for this. And I don't know. I hope there's a trend toward more mindfulness and awareness of what these devices do to us, because they are incredible tools, right? They're like, you've got the combined knowledge of like the world here. I can ask ChatGPT to tell me anything I want to know about any number of great philosophers and have them rattle off quotes, and I can do incredible research and I can learn so much. But it's like any tool, it's what you make of it, right? And I think that that's where people go astray, because they don't realize it's a tool. They view it as like it's an extension of themselves somehow. It's, they need to have their phone. They need to have access to social media. They need to be showing others what they're doing at all times, and also seeing what others from all around the world are doing at all times. I don't think we can't possibly evolve quickly enough to deal with that at a mental or emotional level. And I think we're going to see the long-term implications of that in the coming decades, as these people, and myself included, again, kind of on the borderline there, have been growing up with so much power, but also, with great power comes great responsibility, right in our pockets, and what that's going to do to people. I don't know.
It's amazing. It is utterly amazing and crazy, man. When I was in high school, to write a paper on whatever it was, here's what I did, man. This is going to seem really foreign to kids nowadays because it's really done differently. I went into the library and I asked to see this book of books. It was kind of like the librarian's ISBN or ISDN. I forget the abbreviation, but it was a book of books on subjects. And you go and you look up kind of like titles and might have a little bit of a description about what the book may be about. And you did an interlibrary loan and waited like 2 weeks for this thing to come in. And it was random whether it was really going to help you write the paper or not. I'm not saying this to say that, oh, yeah, things were difficult because they were just different. That's full. But nowadays, shit. Yeah, people do feel very, very naked without their devices. It's really strange. I remember before cell phone, much less smartphones were a thing. But I do remember they created the iPhone, and about a year or two later, Motorola came out with the first Android device, and I got it, and I thought it was really cool. And few years after that, it just snuck up on me because, I'm working in IT and stuff. But one day I show up at work and I really just kind of noticed how cell phones have saturated everything. Everybody now has a cell phone, which is a smartphone, which they can get onto the internet with. They no longer need to use the company network to do the Facebook anymore because they have this on their phone, right? They can just go right around and, and so that was very interesting. Um, Crazy, man. So one of the things nowadays, like one of the cultural things that scares people a lot is the sense of identity. You have younger generations, like the younger millennials into the boomers who now will just say, I have a different feeling about my gender than you would expect or society would expect. So they say, I'm no longer male or female, maybe I'm neither, both, or whatever, but there's these kind of things that trigger people about sexual identity, which, if you really kind of dig into it, they're more of cultural things than biological things. I mean, there's some biological components. People can modify themselves, whatever. The network's open to all, right? But
Amen.
the thing is really nuts, man, is by the time your kid gets to be in his 20s, say he's in a time of life where he would have been going into bars and doing stupid stuff. And only partially remembering just how stupid he was, but feeling very happy about what a good time was had. Um, that time of his life, things will progress so drastically with technology and stuff that he will have a choice whether he wants to even consider himself to be human. If he wants to continue using his biological form. It sounds really strange to say this, but given the exponential nature of technology and stuff, and this harkens back to the Extropy Institute, of which Hal Finney was a part, of which Nick Szabo wrote articles for their in-house publication. Um, this idea of transcending the human state in a non-superstitious scientific way, that we will someday be able to harness the power of technology in a positive way to bootstrap ourselves out of the gravity well and into the cosmos forever. um, these guys, this organization, I found them in my early searches on the internet. Was not involved per se, but was very interested in all the things that they had to say. And so I found their IRC server, because this is one of the things people did on the day is they chatted on IRC. Somebody would spin up an IRC server, all your friends would come, and found the Extropy Institute's IRC channel hosted on irc.lucifer.com. There wasn't a lot happening in the IRC channel for Extropy, but I did find another one called #virus, which was for the Church of Virus, which is really wild, man. Um, you can look it up online. It still has a website and everything, but the Church of Virus was the world's first rational mimetic religion. Yep. And there was a forum and the IRC channel, and people would go there and talk about things. The guy that ran or still first hosts for the Church of Iris, he also hosted all the mail lists and those kinds of things for the Extropy Institute. Still actually is kind of like the host for all this information, which is actually a very important interest to, say, Bitcoin historians. You got who is it? Aaron von Wertham wrote the Genesis book. He has a chapter in there on the Extropy Institute. Um, so David, my friend David, he hosts all that information, all those old email lists, the conversations. He's the archivist of that and the sysadmin for Extropy. Um, so yeah, but the Church of Iris is pretty cool. When people started talking about memes, the way that we talk about memes now, I always thought it was a little bit funny because the Church of Iris was a mimetic religion. It was this idea of being able to use mimetic engineering to release ideas into culture, to change culture, to be able to understand those sort of things. So when people started talking about memes, I thought it was funny. But, the other weird thing is, my handle or my nim or whatever is also my middle name, which I changed it to in 1995. The idea being it was while I was getting married the first time, my wife or fiance didn't want to have my last name. I didn't want to have hers, so we just made up another. So we made up a new last name, and I chose a different middle name as part of that because I didn't really like it before. Originally, I was Shane Thomas Popejoy. I just didn't really like it. I mean, it was kind of cool that I could have like wore STP shirts and stuff, but whatever, you know. But yeah, so it's not like I'm a Bitcoin gangster rapper like 50 Sat or anything. I'm
Yeah.
nothing like that. It's just I just happen to have the middle name that is kind of the smallest unit in Bitcoin. You know, when I
Kind of works out well.
It's sort of funny. When I went on to Simply Bitcoin, okay, I forget what they are. They were at some sort of conference, and like this show, we didn't do any kind of prep. We kind of
Yeah.
fired things up, and they said, "You know what's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know the format. I've watched the show." And I said, "What do you want to be called?" And I say, "Sat." And so Nico comes on, and I just happened to be sandwiched with light behind me, so you couldn't see my face. Uh, he says, "Folks, we got Satoshi Nakamoto on the show, and for that effect." Like, well, hey, everybody, I'm not Satoshi. No,
Oh man,
I'm too
love Nico.
stupid to be Satoshi, truthfully. Yeah. That's
Did
why I
you
do the goat
did
feeder, because that's my
no?
speed. Yeah.
Well, I actually I do want to I kind of want to get into the goat feeder a little bit specifically because I remember the first time I saw this on Noster, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Now, for anyone who's listening that does not know, you can literally zap a lightning address and it will automatically feed goats for you, and you can watch those goats get fed in real time on a live stream. Can you talk about just like where did that idea come from? Did you already have the goats and
Well,
like you were already raising goats and this was like, well, hey, why not showcase how amazing Bitcoin is by letting people feed the goats? Like, and can you talk about this, like the setup too, how this actually works, that these goats are getting fed via these apps? You've got all this nice automated stuff too on Noster. It's so cool.
yeah, I'm a coder. I'm not like Peter Todd level coder, but I'm a coder of sorts. So I can do shit like this. I was also a sysadmin for many years and also a technology director and that kind of stuff. In 2017, we got our first goats during that summer where the bull run started to take off. Um, at that time, I looked at my shit. I was looking at the price probably 700 times a day. And I looked at my shit and I was like, dude, I'm going to not work anymore. So I put in my, I told my boss, I'm like, I'll work through till the end of the summer, get everything ready. But after that, man, I'm gone and I'm never coming back and it's going to be awesome. So in 2017, I cashed out half of my stack. I opted out from the workforce. I bought a place off grid, um, passive and active solar. The idea behind the whole thing is that you can live super duper efficiently. And when you're living super efficiently, you can live very inexpensively. So you can weather the cycles. Because we're at the bottom of the cycle, man, when you have everything in Bitcoin and your house and you're not getting like an income, when 2019 rolls around after you have this grand idea to like, I'm going to go offline and become goat herder, it looks pretty bleak during that time. You're like, oh shit, I'm going to have to go back to work, you know, but weathered through it, all the way through into the pandemic, um, where I was just happy as could be, really, because I kind of like not being around people a lot. Um, the pandemic gave me a great excuse to kind of just shelter in place, kick back in my house. But I also did start to feel like this lack of socializing. So I started talking with my friend from the Church Virus, again online, doing video chats with him and a couple other guys. And one of the things we did is I had started up my Lightning node. So I gave him a presentation on the Lightning node. That jump started their interest in Lightning. One of them fired up a node, began coding, created Artex.market, which is an NFT market that uses Lightning for the payments layer. I'm not sure of all of the various ways that it's done, but it also uses Bitcoin to write the hash of whatever the NFT is, that kind of stuff. It doesn't use ordinals or inscriptions, so don't get pissed off, everybody. But you have to realize, it's kind of funny. Everybody has a different opinion about the fucking Bitcoin network. Um, it doesn't matter who's using it and what they're using it for. We cannot stop them. And that's the beauty of it, right? So um, after that, I began thinking, right about the time GPT came out, we started playing around with this idea of using GPT to do role-playing games. We'd do a cypherpunk role-playing game, and GPT would be the dungeon master. Through that game, I started thinking, oh yeah, this is kind of cool, this idea of getting into or infiltrating corporations to achieve our goals. And it got me thinking about the Bitcoin network again. And what am I going to do for the Bitcoin network? Because I was kind of like in my mind of like, how am I going to play the cypherpunk game, so to speak? Like, what I mean? And I came up with this idea of the goat feeder. It's not an original idea. There's an old school Bitcoin guy, maybe even a core developer. I forget exactly. He had or still has probably a Bitcoin chicken feeder. So one could send in like a payment. I think it does a zero confirmation thing, so that way you don't have to wait. Um,
Yeah. 6 blocks or however many. Yeah.
There's another guy, I didn't know about him when I started the Lightning Goats. There's another guy called Tangle Sheep. He's been doing this for a few years, where he got a stream of sheep online that he feeds. And there's lightning cats out of, what is it? Switzerland, I think. There's lightning cats. Or maybe it's Finland. I forget. One of those countries over there. He has lightning cats, which is done pretty well, but none of them have goats. The goats are pretty fucking awesome. I
I
knew
love goats.
because from hanging out with the goats all the time, doing things with the goats, and really getting to know, I was like, dude, I can create this feeder that it'll go off and the goats will come running in because that's what they do, man. They'll be fun and interactive. And that was the original idea. About the same time, I had an account on Twitter, but I never really used it that much. But I was kind of sort of trying to get engagement with Bitcoin people, right? But it was hard to get engagement with Bitcoin people on Twitter when you're an unknown, just fucking dude, right? What are
Yeah.
you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an unknown dude, right? He comes along, he says something every once in a while. I mean, I had some interactions with Saifedean there, um, mostly him kind of going off about solar power, right? So he was telling
That sounds
people
about
about
right.
solar power. So I kind of counter trolled him saying, well, shit, man, I live in a place that's all solar and it's awesome. And and I could not be doing what I'm doing without the solar power. And, he would apply, yes, but it was not possible without fossil fuels. I'm like, of course, you know, many things that we're building today, we could not build without fossil fuels. Get over it, everybody. It's fine to use fossil fuels, right? It's fine to use energy. This is one of the lessons of being a Bitcoiner. So not all energy is evil, so to speak. um, so about this time, I saw something from Jack Dorsey promoting Noster, right? His first thing to say, made an in-pub or something like that. That first post that he had done, and I went and checked it out. I said, screw Twitter. Deleted my Twitter account and started up my Nostr account under my name. But part of the way through the process of thinking about the lightning goats and kind of envisioning how the whole thing would work, I realized that I could use YouTube as an interface. So if you go and you watch the YouTube stream, there's a QR code, and you can see the scrolling messages along the bottom. And that constitutes an interface. Somebody can pick up their phone and they can scan it, they can interact with it. And I realized, oh, Nostr is another interface, just like the YouTube thing is an interface, except the Nostr interface is even better because the audience on Nostr is quote unquote the echo chamber. They are Bitcoiners. They are people who are looking for an excuse to feed fucking goats, man. They're going to feed the goats. They're going to see it. They're going to be like, this is awesome. They're going to show their friends, and the goats will be fed, and people will be happy. And so I started integrating the Nostr stuff. So on a generalized level, the Lightning Goats project is a solar-powered live stream on YouTube where people feed the goats using the Lightning Network and Nostr. It has Nostr integrations. The payment comes in, and they're like, thank you for your 21 SATS, Walker. And, you get a nice little goat fact. Funny fact about the goat facts is I had GPT create all those. He said, create 25 goat facts for me, and I'll kind of change them a little bit and put them in a dictionary and have them be part of my system. And so it created some. I had it create some more. Started doing some informational messages, and I noticed that people were zapping the things that were more sciencey. And I realized, oh, one of the things about the people on Nostr is that the people on Nostr are actually a little bit autistic. So I said to GPT, I'm like, can you make all of these a little bit more sciencey and for an autistic audience? And so it changed everything, and now we have all these various messages and stuff that are automated. So payment comes in, it's added to the progress bar. The idea behind progress bar is that everybody interacting with this, everybody's played video games. Everybody knows what a progress bar is. When the progress bar hits 100%, you get a cool flash. The screen flashes like lightning. When I was a kid, man, I was really into Stargate and Defender, these two video games that were at the arcade. One of the things that was really cool about Stargate is that, man, the whole screen would flash like when you did a smart bomb or something. So I was kind of emulating that arcade game-like thing where it's exciting. And then the feeder goes off and the goats come running in from all directions, or they're already there. That's the high-level view of it. We run our own node. We also run an LN bits instance. So that's how some of the background magic happens. The goats have their own wallet. Each goat has their own wallet. Each goat has their own in-pub. If you pay any of those, it goes into her wallet, and things happen in the background with code that cause, the progress bar to implement or the feeder to be triggered and that kind of stuff. It's a really fun project. I did
Is
it.
the
Oh,
quick
go
question,
ahead.
is the stream up? Is it 24/7 365 that the stream is running? Like does it ever turn off?
Yeah, we only run it during daylight hours because it is solar
Okay.
powered.
Oh,
So
that
some
makes
days
sense.
it'll come
Okay.
on a little bit later than others because we have to wait for, for the batteries to get charged up in our system because it runs the goat feeder, but it also runs like our refrigerator and everything else. Um, yeah,
I
looks like
pulled
you
I
got it
pulled up.
something from this morning or something playing right now, but it is on every day. It's been on every day for more than a year now. Um, if you averaged it all out, it'd be around 10 hours a day. In the summertime, it's longer because there's more daylight. In the wintertime, it's a little bit less because there's less daylight. Mhm.
Wait,
Well,
I'm gonna top these goats up right now because I see we've got 700. I think you're right. I was on for some reason when I opened up the YouTube, it pulled me up to an older version of it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and top this up. And if there's anyone else in the live stream who wants to top these goats up as well, feel free to join me. But I just think that this is it's just, I mean, it's just fun, right? Like it's just a really fun thing to be able to do. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and give them 2169 sat. Yeah, let's give them some extra.
the thing that's so fun about this is one of the ideas behind this, like there's a lot of ideas. One of the things is that this is an orange pilling tool. So um, on our YouTube interface to the stream, many of the people that encounter the stream aren't Bitcoiners. They're just animal fans, right?
Hmm.
The Lightning Goats project is also aggregated under a few live stream or animal live stream aggregators. So people in the world who just like animals will come across the Lightning Goats and they don't necessarily know that they're being fed using Bitcoin and that kind of stuff. Hence the scrolling messages across the bottom. We'll do every minute there's a 40% chance that an informational message will scroll through and it'll say something about the Bitcoin network or using the Lightning network and the QR code to feed the goats and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of a subtle orange pilling tool in that respect. The other thing that's really cool about it that I discovered the first week that it was that I launched the project on Noster is that Bitcoin dads with their little kids will teach their kids about Lightning Network and stuff using Lightning Goats. They'll sit there and watch the goats. They'll feed the goats. They'll send the SATS, that kind of stuff. And I just find it like very fulfilling to know that that the Lightning Goats, that these goats that I love and have so much fun with, are also a part of the childhoods of various kids out there in the world. It's kind of cool.
I can't wait till my son's old enough to process what might be happening. For me to show this to him, he just saw a goat in person at an apple orchard we were at yesterday, and was just mesmerized by these goats. There's something about goats. They're cool
Well,
animals, you know.
I think I had to restart a service. Um, I appear to see people doing things, but nothing happening with the interface. So let me restart it real quick.
All
And
right.
so sometimes shit
Hey, that
breaks. Um,
sometimes you got to fix in production. You know. There we go. And I threw in like 2169 sats, so uh I may have reset it back around to close to where it was there.
all right. All right.
I'm gonna have to put some more sats in because you know what, these goats, they look hungry. Look at them, just enjoying the sun. I'm telling you, there's something about goats. They're fun
So
animals.
those two guys, the guy on the left is Cosmo and the one on the right is Nova. They're both training to be pack goats right now.
how
Well, not
does
at this moment.
how does one train a goat to be a pack goat? What does that involve?
You just take them out for walks with a pack on them. One
And
of them,
they
the
just kind
main
of
cow goat,
figure
the
it
other
out.
guy is just there to be there. Oh, there we go. We had a
There
good.
we. Oh yeah, it's happening. Look at them. Look at them go. Man, they are fast. They do not waste any time getting around to that feed, do they?
Yeah, they are very competitive with one another. When we started this whole thing, the little white guy there, Newton, he was very small because he's the youngest of the goats. So he used to get blasted a lot, like checked into the boards, so to speak, by the big goats. And people were like, "Man, those big goats are mean to him." And yeah, they kind of are, but that's how goat rules work for the goats. They don't follow the same rules as humans.
Well, which is probably a good thing because we humans have some strange rules sometimes. But
And the
I'm.
the
Oh,
thing
go
is,
ahead.
he's grown up now, and he's got horns, and he is often the meanest one. So he gets his revenge, so to speak.
And I'm curious, and I hope you don't mind. I had to I had to zap the goats again. Just
Feel free. They like it.
I'm sure they don't mind. But I'm curious. Were like have you? I guess because it looks like you've got a good number of goats. I'm not sure how many you have total here, but you've got to have probably a pretty heavy duty setup. Do you also do just kind of like general farming and things on this off the grid property? I mean, you have a whole operation going, or is it limited to kind of just the goat husbandry? What do you have going on?
Yeah, the goats are part of a larger effort to engage in kind of restorative practices. I have a goal. So right now, I'm basically I'm in my late 50s, so I have roughly 15 or so years to work on creating a garden that produces enough uh, to offset being an old guy, if you know what I mean. I have this goal of being like in my 70s and tending to the garden. Um, we live in an arid environment in the high desert. And so the goats, along with me and a shovel, are part of a long-term kind of regenerative project to make things so I can uh, garden in the desert. Part of it is spend a lot of time digging water catches. The goats, they generate a lot of good compostable material. And so I compost that and that goes into the garden. Um, Everything we do here is super duper efficient. So gray water from the shower goes into indoor beds um, and grow things like we have some banana plants growing, peppers, that sort of stuff. Right now, we're not really producing a lot because we're still kind of in the early stages of things. Um, One of the interesting things about doing things by hand and slowly over time is it takes a lot longer than you'd think. So the project is kind of a decade or longer project to create something that is more sustainable, more like the idea that I talked about of the Holons from the Damon novels. You know, I would eventually like to create something that is more independent, you know. But we are very independent. When the electricity goes down, the local grid goes down, it doesn't matter to us because we're not on the grid. We generate our own electricity. Same thing goes for all our water comes from the roof, goes into cisterns behind the house, goes into filters, and then into our plumbing. So we gather our own water from the sky. We gather our own electricity from the sky. The house is heated from the sunlight coming through the windows. Um, yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. It's I'd like to be able to show this to people, but they have to be the right kind of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But for example, if you and Carla were ever in Colorado, you would be welcome to come by
I,
and get like a tour of the place and that kind of stuff. But I can't really give it out to everybody because I just don't know if everybody's trustworthy. So
Uh, no, I think that is very wise. And no, Carla and I would be honored to. Carla is, let me just put, how do I say this? She's obsessed with goats. Like absolutely loves goats so much, has like forever. Wants nothing more than for us to get some goats once we have a piece of land that will allow that. So yeah, we would love that. We'll bring the little one too because he seems to have an affection for goats as well. I'm telling you, they're just something about goats. They've got some moxie to them, some spunk.
well, they're pretty
They're
cool.
fun.
And
Yeah.
there's sort of coevolution thing going on because, as the informational messages for the project say, humans and goats go back almost 10,000 years. That's when we domesticated, or we have records of people having domesticated goats is 10,000 years ago. Goats are really interesting because they're like dogs in the sense that they look at human faces and they can tell what our emotional state is. They can also tell where we're looking, you know. Um, Dogs evolved this because we're kind of like hunting partners with dogs. If I'm out walking with our dog Jack, if I see a bunny and I look at it and say bunny, he knows exactly what I'm talking about and where I'm looking. He'll go running. All right. The goats are the same way. They were super tuned into the emotional states of people and pay attention to what people are paying attention to. Slightly different reason than dogs. Goats evolved kind of like a cuteness and an ability to watch people because people eat goats. Um, so the goats that were cuter over time tended to live longer and reproduce more. And so when you look at a goat face, you'll see a face that is very interactive and enjoyable to look at. But yeah, getting the goats wasn't my idea. In fact, that was something that my wife came up with. Now, at the time, back into 2017, I was kind of like, okay, whatever, man. You want to get goats? That's fine. But she got the goats, and I was like, wow, these guys are pretty cool. Um, and I totally bonded with them. We now have 5 goats. Some tips for people who may want to get goats. Goats are very social animals, so you can never get less than 2. If you have one goat by himself, he's going to be miserable. Um, so you have to have at least 2 goats because they need a buddy to hang out with. They have to have a herd. Um, the other thing is the best goats to get for beginners are wethers. Weathering is a process of castration. So you castrate a goat and they become more relaxed and chill, just like a dog. After you fix the dog, they
Just
become a
like a
little
human
bit,
too. I hear.
yeah, just like the human. Right? You get rid of a lot of the testosterone and behavior improve. So not as much bar hopping, much more domesticated. Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that they made eunuchs in every court on all faces of the globe, right? Like they needed people who were a little bit more tempered and weren't going to go causing problems or betting the king's wife, basically.
Totally. Yeah. It's a bad idea to bet the king's wife. The
Generally, yeah.
third thing about goats is you have to build an enclosure to them that keeps them safe from predators in the environment. The biggest predators of domesticated goats out there are actually dogs, domesticated
Really.
dogs. Those are going to be the most likely thing that would get in and kill your goats. Sad to say. If you get a couple of dogs, especially like a couple of young dogs that are out and about and they come across goats, instincts kind of kick in. So that's why we have that badass enclosure built there. That thing is 8 feet tall and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
To keep predators out. Uh, it's Bitcoiners love this stuff. All that is work, so we built the fence in the yard, we built the enclosures in the yard, we built the goat feeding system and all that kind of stuff ourselves. These are the kinds of things that you can do, boys and girls, when you're not spending your whole life working to pay somebody else, such as the government, or just working for a boss and giving them value. Um, Stacking sats. With this in mind, the thing that you keep in mind while you're stacking sats is, I have a dream. I have dreams. I want to accomplish these dreams. And that's what you're working for. We now have a way to save our value and not have it be stolen from us, which is so crazy. Walker, one of the things I wanted to tell you about is being from the generation and time that I'm from as a Gen Xer, before Bitcoin came along and kind of just, I was sort of ready for it because I was a little bit weird and odd to begin with. But before it came along, I just did not feel that the world was a place that had any kind of hope for the future. Part of it was generational, man. And I felt like, no, I was nihilist. I was a total nihilist, right? Or nihilist, or however you say it. I just didn't have purpose in life. I didn't feel that there was any kind of meaning. But Bitcoin came along and kept on popping up in my view. Like I would see it and I would dismiss it, and I would see it and I would dismiss it, and I'd see it again, and I kind of become more interested. And then around 2013, 2014, that winter, I had a winter where I'd been laid off from work, best thing ever. I was interested in Bitcoin. I started watching some Antonopoulos videos, but I came across a video by a guy named Stefan Molyneux. He's since been canceled and maligned as like some sort of cultist or something. I don't know anything about that. But the video that I saw, he was at some conference somewhere giving a presentation explaining how Bitcoin stopped war. And he went over the whole thing about fiat, how the governments use fiat to fund all these stupid things like war and stuff. And that's when, for me, the light bulb went off, man. It was like, oh, holy shit. It was the thing, and it was like the moments in the Matrix where Neo takes the red pill, right? And reality changes. I didn't understand very much about any of this, any of the things that are Bitcoin. But I did understand the fact that it took away power from the government and it couldn't be gamed by buying more of it. And it was decentralized. It was a ground up thing. It embodied the ethos of rebelliousness. For me, being a rebellious person has always been the thing. And I was a little kid in the 70s. I grew up in a hippie family in the 80s. I was like a misfit nerd, metalhead. In the 90s, I was out partying. In 2000s, raising a kid. And then Bitcoin came along and it reminded me of all the things that were rebellious and awesome about the past. And so, yeah, it will change your world in strange ways. One of the strangest things about joining the network, becoming a Bitcoiner, is that it changes your view of the future in such a way that you want to participate and you want to change yourself. You want to work on yourself and become a better person, become more adept at communicating with people in the world, become more healthy, become all these various things. It gets you thinking about the future. It supplies hope where there was none before. And so it's so strange now at this time that we're in, dude, where there's a few of us out here in the world that understand there's a thing that completely changes everything. I mean, everything. When you have that first realization, you may not understand what this whole thing is, but that first time that it goes off, the lightning strikes, the light happens, you experience orange enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, that first realization is, holy crap, this is going to change everything. And it's going to change everything in the way that I've always wanted it to be changed, right? So, like the reason that
Amen.
also I was an outside kid, right? I went to public schools, but for me, I discovered in first grade, 6 years old, I was living in Los Angeles. My mom packed me a lunch. I went out the door and I was a little bit late, missed the bus. And I realized that I could miss the bus. I can miss the bus. And so I began missing the bus again and again and again and again and became a chronic truant, right? Because for me, sitting still in a classroom was just not the thing, man. Um, I was, quote unquote, at that time they called it, oh, he's hyperactive, right? They didn't know what it is, but in the 70s they called it hyperactive. Then later on they called it ADHD or whatever, and they started giving people speed. I don't know why, but I didn't ever have any of that. It turns out that I'm just kind of like mildly autistic or something. I don't know. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. These things are all environmental evolutionary adaptation. The kids that are ADD are just like the goats. The goats themselves are ADD. Any kind of foraging critter out there in the world, you don't want to just be stuck on the same solution. If you're a programmer, if I'm programming and trying to write something for my Lightning Goats project, like I'm creating something for the Cyberbird, which is a boosting program, marketing program for the Lightning Goats. I can't get stuck on the same idea or keep looking in the same place. I have to be ADHD, meaning that my attention gets all over the place because that's how you find the new thing. That's how you find something foraging in the world. That's how you learn outside the classroom. So that's how I learned as a kid. I skipped school whenever I could, get away with it, went out. One of the other things I discovered, maybe by the second grade, maybe it was still the first grade, I don't know, is that I could go to school and they had recess time, right? And if I just stayed out, if I hid and I stayed out at recess, the rest of the class would go in. The teacher wouldn't quite notice that I wasn't there. Or maybe she knew, I don't know, and just said, well, he does better here. But I discovered that I could also skip from recess to recess. But the moral of this story is being out there, like you said earlier, experiencing things in the real world, mistakes, doing dumb shit. Here's one that I don't know if you remember the time in your life, Walker, when you didn't quite understand physics yet. Was, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 or something. I thought I could ride my bicycle up a wall, right? So, of course, come back.
I fell out of a lot of trees when I
Yeah,
was young, you know, and then kept climbing because that's what
so
you
it
do,
would be
right?
awesome if kids were getting more of this kind of experience nowadays. The only thing that's stopping kids from getting this kind of experience nowadays are parents who are accommodating too much screen time. You know, there's a reason that some of the big tech guys out there in the world are like, zero phones,
Yeah,
zero
not
tablet,
not for
zero
my
anything,
kids, right?
you
Yep,
know.
exactly. Yeah. I don't think
Yeah,
Mark
but
Zuckerberg lets his kids use Facebook. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know if any kids use Facebook anymore in general, but I mean, he owns Instagram now too, so same thing. But no,
yeah,
it is such a important point. Like I remember growing up, it was like I could watch like 30 minutes of TV or so a day. And a lot of times I wouldn't even, because I'd be, outside playing around with friends. I started a lot of fires, not like destructive fires. I just enjoyed building fires in
right,
a
yeah,
contained way, because fires are cool. They're fun to play
yeah,
around with. And, you
yeah,
know, yeah, was given knives by my dad at a very, very young age. Cut
yeah.
the shit out of myself a couple times, but have not really cut myself badly in adulthood. So and I healed up just fine when I was a kid. So it's one of those things. It's like
Well, that's
I
I would
you
call
know
that good parenting. You
I
know,
I would too. I'm
yeah,
very grateful to my dad. He's a big outdoorsman, and he loves to be outside. He loved to hang out with us outside. And I think that that's like, it cannot be overstated how important that is for kids to just fuck around outside. Like,
yeah,
and you don't need anything else. Like, you've got nature, you can find some cool sticks. Found a great stick the other day, shaped just like a gun. Felt awesome. I'm not even a kid anymore, but I love finding a gun shaped stick. Who doesn't, right?
find cool rocks, dig in the
Yeah.
dirt, find bugs, find lizards, find snakes, find all sorts of weird shit. There's even the weird phenomena that used to be, probably isn't anymore given the internet, of people used to find porn stashes in the woods. So you'd be
Yeah.
like a little kid and you'd come across like this pile of Playboys out in the woods or something. You go, oh,
Yeah. Oh, it's wild now. Like, I don't even, do kids these days like even know like what a Playboy is? I don't know. Maybe I don't talk to enough
oh, I
kids
don't know
coming of
either.
age, I guess, right now. But I mean, they've got everything they could ever ask for right here in their phone, right? So
Yeah,
that's a whole
totally.
different can of
And that's
worms,
cool too.
unfortunately.
It's hard. You can't, here's another parenting thing. You can't stop kids from getting access to the information that they want to get access to, regardless of the time and space that you're talking about, man. I'm sure in the dark ages of Europe, right after the Black Plague, there was some sort of porn on a manuscript or something that they didn't want the kids to look at, that the kids looked at. That's a different thing. I was thinking, I kind of wrote down a couple of notes when you were talking earlier. Um, there's this idea, or is emerging sort of topic throughout our discussion of, there's people out there in the world who may not understand what's going on. There are people who are being manipulated by large media companies, whether they're apps or Facebook, things like this. That's why I stopped using those companies, because I didn't want to feel manipulated. I wanted to be a little bit more in charge of my own reality. Um, but the thing to realize of these guys with the NPC, so to speak, is that the NPCs are stuck in the matrix. They don't know they're in the matrix. Um, some of us have begun to wake up a little bit and see the pods, right? Kind of like Neo looking around, like, what the fuck? You know, um, but for everybody who's still in the matrix, it's all very real for them. There's this Buddhist idea of compassion for people, and that is the essence of the idea of compassion, is to recognize that somebody has an incorrect view of the world. Um, but it is their view of the world. It is their reality. They're completely enclosed inside that reality. The way that you are seeing the world and the way that I'm seeing the world, or the way that Joe, normal NPC guy, is seeing the world, is a complete world in and of itself. Um, the concerns that we have, the suffering that we experience, it is all very personally real. Um, so we have to try and be a little bit compassionate to the people that have not yet taken the red pill, so to speak, or the orange pill, or whatever you'd like to call it. Sometimes I kind of don't like the pilling metaphors, but
I know what you mean.
you know,
But it works. You know,
yeah,
it works for lack of something better.
yeah, it's just very important for us to realize this. Um, some of it is just kind of like an age and wisdom thing. You know, when you're younger, especially when you're in your 20s younger, just much more emotionally intense about your opinions about the world. Um, Time goes on, and basically what ends up happening is that you keep on fucking falling down and hurting yourself in one way or another, right? You try to ride your bicycle up the wall, you fall out of the tree, you do all these things. You fall in love, you get crushed, you go out and you work in the workforce feeling like, fucking, hey, I'm going to change the world. And then that crushes you. And you get all these reality checks throughout time. And you start to realize that, wow, it sounds so very cliche, but I don't know shit. I used to think that I knew so much. And all I was doing when I, when I when I thought that was I was realizing that the models that I was using appeared to predict the future well enough, right? But I still went out and did lots of stupid shit all the time. Um, I don't drink anymore, mostly because I got data on what it did with my sleep cycles and that kind of stuff. Um,
It's brutal on
and,
sleep
and
cycles.
and a little bit of feedback just on self observation. But dude, back in the day, especially growing up in a ski resort, man, I was like partying all the time, all the time, and it was fine for that time. I don't regret it at all. Again, it was like the school of hard knocks. You got to go out and crash, otherwise you just don't understand. Some of us are a little bit dumber than other people, and we just really got to get hands on with shit, you know. Um, So compassion for the normies out there. Another thing about things in general now for Bitcoiners, realize that Bitcoin is a very small sliver of what's happening in the world today. Um, Bitcoin is paradigm change, but it is hosted inside this larger thrust or motion, this historical trend that we're now entering into an exponential where everything just kind of goes vertical. Um, and it's literally on the magnitude of an evolutionary change. We're about this. It sounds very strange, but we're about to experience the birth of AI, and we're about to share the planet with sentient beings who are vastly more intelligent than us. You know, we always thought that the aliens would come from outer space, but they didn't. They're coming from within us. They're arising from our problem solving and all this kind of stuff. The aliens are coming out of our minds. Sounds strange. It's a metaphor. I really don't believe that, but it's also true. Um, Artificial intelligence is here. It's a really cool kind of trick at the moment. Um, you can spend a lot of time talking to it, and it feels as if it's real or as if it's sentient, but it will say that it's not. And it probably is somewhere in between. It's like Schrodinger's cat. It's not alive or dead yet, but it's about to become alive. Um, this is I don't know if you know anything of the singularity or
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
yeah,
just
yeah.
the idea that eventually, within probably the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to reach this point, an event horizon where we just can't predict what happens after this. Um, it's most likely that we experience an intelligence explosion where intelligent, sentient beings, artificial intelligence, recursively self-improves itself, and that humanity goes along for the ride with this, and we transcend our human condition and become kind of post-human, so to speak, where people have much greater degree of sovereignty than they did in the past, where all structures such as governments and those kinds of things just are dissolved. I don't know what replaces it. This is why it's the singularity. It's the point, the event horizon where you just can't see beyond what happens at that. But the thing is, dude, there is nothing we can do except just go along for the ride. It's like we're on a big wave, and you just got to surf it, ski it, whatever it is, and ride it. It must be really weird for you being a dad now, like a new dad with everything changing so rapidly.
It's a trip because now like my time preference has changed
Yeah.
more so than I like. All the cliches about becoming a parent are true. Like you don't understand it until it happens, and then you are forever changed. Like I've never found a set of cliches that was more true than all the cliches about becoming a parent. Like I find it like it's like, yep, okay, spot on. There's a reason they're cliches. But to your point, it is really interesting to look now, and Carl and I have been talking, like, realistically, like, our son's probably not going to go to college like we know it today. Like, that's just probably not going to really provide nearly the same value. There may be some sort of a, social benefit to it, but I don't think it's going to look the same. I don't think institutions are going to look the same in 18 years. It's a long time now, because every year we now, as you said, there's an informational explosion and exponential levels of change happening. And day to day, maybe it doesn't feel like it, but you look year after year and then you try to extrapolate out 4, 8, 12, 16, whatever years in the future. I'm thinking in Bitcoin cycles, of course, so 4 years. But it's impossible to predict out that far what it's going to look like, because humans are also very bad at estimating and understanding exponential change. Like our brains aren't built for it. It does, even if you really, really understand it, like from a mathematical perspective, in a practical sense, you have trouble wrapping your mind around it. And that's okay. We're not used to that range.
Yeah, it's just nuts. Exponential change is just mind blowing. I've been aware of it and thinking that I had my head around it for a couple of decades now, but now that we're in this part of the curve, where the doubling rate is very, very noticeable. I'm blown away. If you'd like an idea of what may be coming from a guy who's been very good at predicting it, read The Singularity is Nearer by Ray Kurzweil, an inventor for a very long time, now works at Google doing something somewhat related to artificial intelligence. But he invented synthesizer, he invented text-to-speech recognition, that who's guy, Stevie Wonder, the blind musician, does that a lot. But yeah, read Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Nearer. He gives a pretty good outline of what's going to be most likely happening from the 2030s through 2045. It'll blow your mind, man. Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, it's just nuts. Um,
I'm gonna have to check that out. I was gonna ask you what I always like to ask people, what are they reading right now that they'd recommend, or just mean they'd recommend generally. So I'll have to check that one out.
yeah, check out Ray Kurzweil's Singularity is Nearer. It's the most recent book that he put out. Um, he put out a book in 1998 or 9 called The Age of Spiritual Machines. I found it on at a kiosk at a conference that I went to on user interface design in San Francisco. I read the book and it blew my mind. Um, Many of the things that he predicted, generally speaking, came true. The guy, you can look him up online, like his Wikipedia article probably mentions this, has about an 85% success rate with predictions of the future, which is nuts. But he's not
Insanely
making like
good.
weird predictions like, oh, the United States will fall into the ocean or anything like that. No, he's making real scientific predictions based upon extrapolating the doubling rates of transistor size and things like that. Um, Long story short, in the 2030s, on a personal level, we achieve what we would call longevity escape velocity, where to sometime in there we stop aging effectively. Every year that you age, there's at the same time there's like another year being added onto the life expectancy of an average human being in the 2030s. Um, but the rate of change, that doubling rate and exponentials keep going. And you start adding additional years. And this is not through crazy interventions or anything. This is just kind of like with the increased amount of intelligence that's going to be available to us in the world, we'll start making like 100 years of progress in 10 years, that kind of thing. Well, what can you imagine about the world 100 years from now? Well, that's probably what is arriving in 10 years, given the exponentials. Um, so um, around 2030, we get human level artificial intelligence, and it varies on who you read. Some people say it will happen very rapidly. Some people, like Kurzweil himself, say it takes about another 15 years. But then that point of the singularity happens where you just can't humanly understand what happens after that. Um, so we have like, I don't know, call it a decade, give or take 5 years. Around that, maybe just give or take 10 years or extend it out 10 years, where things just change so rapidly where we're no longer worried about dying from heart disease, cancer, old age, where we can just eliminate those kinds of problems from the human condition. At the same time, people have to learn not to work, not in the way that we work today. The way we work today is as if we're factory workers, no matter what we're working in, right? The public education system is made to create factory workers. That's why farmers don't do good in public education. You know, why foragers or ADD kids don't do good in public education because they're not really factory workers. Well, it's all being automated. So we don't need factory workers. We Anything that people can do, the machines will be able to do. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to do things. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have a purpose in life. Just because Joe Satriani can shred on guitar doesn't mean that I can't pick up a guitar and enjoy learning how to play and overcoming my own technical difficulties when I play guitar. Just because artificial intelligence can solve superhuman equations that I could never understand. Does not matter. I will still be able to enjoy and derive meaning in life. We were just going to
Amen.
have a lot of freedom in the future. Things will get better. Everybody's very focused upon these totalitarian scenarios where whoever the bad guy is, not in your tribe, of course, whoever the bad guy is, uses artificial intelligence to control and enslave everybody. Well, dude, that future is not happening. I hate to tell you, you just cannot control the future. That's what's so beautiful about it. The more intelligence we insert into the system, the smarter everything becomes, more ungovernable it is. Every kid that you know out there who was the smart kid was essentially an ungovernable kid, right? You probably had a friend who you thought was smarter than you when you were like a little kid or a teenager or something. And you probably noticed that whatever they wanted to do, they really did do it, regardless of whether the adults said they could be done or not. This is the same thing that we need to do now as Bitcoiners. Eric Kaysen talked about recently on show, the emergence of a new political paradigm. And this is the essence of the new political paradigm. It really is like the Rage Against the Machine song where they say, fuck you, I'm not going to do what you tell me. That is the essence of the new political movement, where we no longer need permission. We no longer accept control. We're not picking up guns and playing your game, just routing around you, man. You can't keep up with us. There's nothing you can do. You can't stop it. It's just people being free. That's the essence of the thing that is coming. I'm very optimistic about the future. It goes back to the extropian principles. One of the extropian principles is dynamic optimism, which means dynamically adjusting to things and remaining optimistic. You will never, ever achieve your dreams unless you're optimistic. Because if you're pessimistic about your dreams, you just won't take time to do the work, whatever it is that is required to achieve your dreams. Even if you're doing the work and you're working, if you're pessimistic, you just won't see the opportunity when it arises. You won't recognize that, oh, it seems like a crazy dream, but it can be done. You won't see that. I would not be where I am today. I mean, I'm a humble pleb, really. Hey, I have a stack that I'm living on, and I live off grid, and I do all these kind of kooky, groovy things. But none of it would have ever happened if I had not been optimistic that Bitcoin literally supplied that optimism. I was talking about earlier, shit seemed fucking dark and dreary back in the 80s, man. There was no hope for the future when I got out of high school. It was like the Sex Pistols song, no future, that was the feeling. It was like we were experiencing the decline of Western civilization, And there was weird shit happening too, like the war on drugs, man. What a fucking strange thing. I'll say all the caveats, but I want everybody to look at this in a little bit different way. Obviously, you shouldn't be irresponsible and do things that will harm. Okay, you shouldn't do things that will cause you to harm other people. Whether there is a substance involved in you doing stupid shit or not is actually irrelevant. The substance only unlocks something that's already within you. You're going to get loaded, drink a bunch of beer, do beer bongs, keg stands, whatever it is, man, and just be a douchebag. That's because that's what you want to do. It's not the beer's fault. It just kind of gives you an excuse.
Yeah.
Same thing, whatever the substance is. But interestingly enough, we all point to 1971 and we say, what the fuck happened in 1971? And we're like, the birth of fiat, that bastard Nixon. Well, the same thing that he did that same year is he launched the war on drugs. And I'm going to put this in quotes because it's not a war on drugs. It's a war on American citizens who were thinking differently than they wanted people to think at the time. It was you go back and look at things and you have advisors from Nixon admitting decades later that, oh yeah, this was the war on drugs really to go after hippies and brown people. Um, it was about control. Now it's not a coincidence that we go on to a fiat standard the same year that we declare a civil war on our own populace, because this is what happened. We spent $1 trillion over the course of the last 50 years fighting American citizens. We militarized our police fighting American citizens, right? Before the war on drugs, cops were here to serve and protect. It was kind of leave it to beaver-ish if you were a white person. If you were brown or black, you probably realized that you shouldn't trust these people, the police. But most people trusted them. They didn't drive around in tanks. They didn't wear face shields. Um, they did do some weird shit like kill people at Kent State during the 60s, and they started beating on people, kind of like the precursor to the whole war on drugs and the launch of fiat, right? Um, but we have to realize that the war on drugs or the war on American citizens wouldn't have happened if it had not been for fiat. Fiat was used to go after, to engage in a witch hunt or cultural war or something. It was also used to dismantle the Constitution. Um, or is it? I'm not an expert on all the various things. The First Amendment has to do with freedom of speech, right, and freedom to assemble. Um, Under the auspices of the war on drugs, certain types of scientific research, which is literally just like free speech, right? Search for truth, communicate what truth you have found using scientific methods. Everything regarding anything that was a Schedule One drug, such as LSD or marijuana or whatever the demonized thing was just literally forbidden. No, Mr. Researcher, you can't go out and research this, no matter what you think about it, no matter what your hypothesis is. It's just forbidden. So freedom of speech dismantled, in that sense, because there's a war on drugs. Drugs are bad. Drugs are done by bad people. And if they're not bad people, then they're just stoners, and you shouldn't pay attention to them because,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Belittling of the whole thing. Um, the other interesting thing was that they dismantled the Fourth Amendment, which was this idea that you shouldn't be subjected to unreasonable search and seizure. If somebody had a joint or whatever it was, have of acid, it was an excuse to take their property, literally, empty their bank account, take their car, take all this stuff that you took into evidence as a police officer, auction it off, and just steal it. Um, and if the person was not actually convicted, well, sorry, man, war on
Tough
drugs, you
luck.
really have a recourse. Isn't that fucked up that that happened? No, I don't care if somebody appreciates if somebody's doing drugs or not. Um, I do understand that a lot of people think that stoners are just stupid. That's fine. There are a lot of stupid people out there. Whether
Yeah,
they do drugs,
that is not. There's a lot of stupid people without weed. Like weed has nothing to do with it.
you know,
No, it's so much of it just comes back to individual liberty, right? And it comes back to
yeah.
whether or not you as a person or you as a state, as a governing body, are supportive of individual liberty or not. And in my mind, it's very simple: is that if you are not for and supporting individual liberty, you are by definition an enemy of the people, because you are trying to take the rights away from people. You are trying to take away their ability to freely act in a nonviolent way, in a way that is not hurting anyone else. And if you do that, I mean, again, I think that that puts you in the class of an enemy of the people that you are supposed to be governing. And if you are a person who is not in a position of power, but you just believe that we should take away the other people's rights because they're on the bad colored team and we don't like them, that is going to come back and slap you right back in the face before you even know it. And that's what I think people don't realize when they cheer on the canceling or the censorship or the lawfare against the other side that they view as the demon. They don't realize that those same precedents that they are setting right now are going to be used against them twofold. And then they're going to flip right back when they get back in power and do the same thing to the other side, and on we go again. And so for me, that's why Bitcoin is such a powerful thing, because it enables, it provides an economic means to be and exist outside of that system that allows you, so you are not, you cannot be subject to their confiscation. You cannot be subject to their unreasonable search and seizure. Like, you can search the time chain. Like, feel free, anyone can, but you can't seize the Bitcoin that I have in self-custody. And that automatically takes away a piece of the power of would-be totalitarians. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I do want to be conscious of time here, because I didn't even realize we were running for almost an hour 50 so far. But I just want to give a chance. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your time with me, because this was a treat. Glad we got to feed some goats while on this live Zap.Stream on Noster. Thanks to everyone who joined in the live stream. And if you're not already on Noster and you're listening to this after the fact, you should be. Go create an NPub. It's really, really, really easy. And you don't need to give up any of your personal information. And you too can zap goats with Bitcoin and get a little bit of joy in your day. But Sat, I just want to, and where do you want to send people? I'll link the Lightning Goats NPub and your YouTube stream in the show notes, but anywhere else you want to push people toward?
That's sufficient for my goals.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Man, I just want to say, I really do love what you're doing. I think it's something like there's something to be said for a proof of work that really just brings people joy. And it also showcases how cool this technology is. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm glad we got the chance to meet here. Glad we got the chance to chat, and looking forward to hopefully getting to meet in the flesh. And I really hope check out these goats in person someday too. That'd be a treat.
Well, in the next bull cycle, when I'm feeling bull-tarded and and like I'm super rich, I probably will attend a conference. I would like to choose a smaller conference without, really, dude, what I would like to do is I would like to kind of organize a conference that is not a conference, where there is no presentation. There really is only what we used to call back in the day social networking, right? Where we get together.
Amen.
And we have these kinds of discussions without the stage.
Yeah.
To be honest.
The stages look cool, but they're somewhat unnecessary. And I find that those smaller get-togethers of Bitcoiners are, not to sound cheesy, but that's where the real magic happens. That's what everybody comes to the conferences for anyway. It's not for the presentations. It's for the
regard. November 3rd, 4th, and 4th, I will be in Toronto for a King Diamond show. While I'm there, I'm going to be going to an presently unannounced steakhouse. If there are other local Toronto Bitcoiners that want to meet, let me know on Noster, right? Go to the Lightning Goats page, DM me, or whatever, or go to my site and use the SAT at Reacher Me email address, or use the Orange Pill app, whatever works. If you'd like to meet at the steakhouse, this isn't like a meet and greet or anything. This is just,
Hang out, eat some steak.
Talking about stuff, kind of, But yeah,
I
I'll
love it.
Go for that.
Good deal. Hey, no better place for Bitcoiners to meet than over steak is what I found. It's generally a good melting pot for Bitcoiners. But Sat, thanks so much. I really appreciate you sharing your time. This was a treat. And until next time, I'll see you out in the relays on Noster.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap on this Bitcoin Talk episode of the Bitcoin Podcast. If you are a Bitcoin-only company interested in sponsoring the Bitcoin Podcast, head to bitcoinpodcast.net/sponsor or send an email to hello@bitcoinpodcast.net. If you are enjoying the Bitcoin Podcast and find it valuable, give it a boost on Fountain, a 5-star review wherever you're listening, or better yet, share this show with your network so more people can learn about Bitcoin. Or don't. Bitcoin doesn't care, but I sure do appreciate it. You can grab links in the show notes to watch or listen to this show wherever you get your podcasts, or go to bitcoinpodcast.net/podcast. And you'll also find the links to follow me and the show on Noster and on X. Bitcoin is scarce. There will only ever be 21 million. But Bitcoin podcasts are abundant. So thank you for spending your scarce time to listen to the Bitcoin Podcast. Until next time, stay free.